Welcome to Texas PTA Spotlights Financial Reconciliation. During this training, we will cover what is a financial reconciliation, what's the purpose of it, when is it completed, who does the work, how is it done, and when is it reported. A financial reconciliation is a thorough review of the records of the PTA by a special committee of non-signers who are appointed by the president. So, why do we do a financial reconciliation? Before the next signers begin their work, we want a neutral group of members to verify the accuracy of the financial records of the PTA, assure the membership that the policies and procedures of the PTA were followed, make sure that we qualify for and maintain embezzlement or bond insurance coverage by verifying that a non-signer reviews the bank statement regularly, 2 people count money at the same time, and that a financial reconciliation was conducted. Additionally, we want to check that all legal reporting requirements are met, and the goal here is not to find something wrong, but to keep everyone accountable, not just the treasurer, but the entire board, and we want to make sure we are following best practices, and if not, recommend procedures to begin doing so. A financial reconciliation shall be performed at the end of the fiscal year when any authorized check signer is added or deleted on any bank account and any time deemed necessary by the president or 3 or more members. For the financial reconciliation required at the end of the fiscal year, the president shall appoint the committee at least 30 days before the last meeting of the year. A financial reconciliation is also part of a Texas PTA state review, which is extremely uncommon. According to your PTA bylaws, the president shall appoint, subject to the approval of the executive board or membership, depending on the circumstances, a financial reconciliation committee consisting of not less than 3 members who are not authorized signers. Members of the Financial Reconciliation Committee shall not be the current secretary, incoming treasurer, or be related by blood or marriage, and shall not reside in the same household as the authorized signers. So now that we've covered who appoints the committee and the makeup of the committee, we need to talk about who prepares the records. The outgoing or the returning treasurer is responsible for putting the records in order for the committee. However, the treasurer will need to work cooperatively with the outgoing or returning secretary to gather what is needed. For all the information you need to prepare for and conduct a financial reconciliation, be sure to visit txpta.org/financial-reconciliation. You will find the checklist and report, a confidentiality agreement for the committee, as well as a listing of everything a treasurer and a secretary need to provide to the committee. Now we're going to focus on the records that the Financial Reconciliation Committee is going to be expecting from the treasurer. The first thing is a current year annual report or budget versus actual for the period under review. This is just a summary level report of each budget line or category, the approved amount by membership, as well as the actual amount spent during the current period. The committee will also need a way to see how much you have in the sales tax or national state dues liability or escrow accounts. In PTEZ, this is provided through the balance sheet, but it depends on what kind of financial tracking system you're using, how you would provide that to the committee. You also need to make sure the committee has a general ledger. This is a listing of all transactions for the period under review and all financial reports for the period under review. Some additional items the committee needs from the treasurer are all receipts and invoices for expenditures with PTA funds request forms, all bank receipts with PTA deposit forms, all checks for all accounts, the cleared, voided, and unused ones, Check images from the bank will suffice for the items that were cleared. Additionally, they are looking for your bank statements and reconciliations for all accounts, as well as the electronic payment collection system documentation. These could be reports from PayPal, Square, a merchant account, etc. The treasurer also provides either an IRS Form 990N confirmation of acceptance, meaning that they not only electronically filed the 990N, but also had it accepted by the IRS and then provided a screenshot of that for the committee, or a draft of the appropriate 990EZ or 990. Those aren't filed until the completion of the financial reconciliation, but the draft should be provided to the committee so that they know that the process is underway. Also, the committee is going to be looking for sales and use tax, the permit, if the PTA has one, and if they do have a sales and use tax permit, they would need to see any returns that were filed for that period, and finally, any correspondence with any taxing authority. Now we're moving on to what is provided by the secretary. First, and very important, are the minutes from both membership and executive board meetings. And those minutes should include the presented financial reports, the last financial reconciliation report, as well as statement reviews by non-signer forms that they presented at each of the executive board meetings. Additionally, the secretary should provide a current membership roster as well as an executive board roster. They should provide either a printed or links to bylaws, standing rules, and policies that are in effect during the period under review. The confidentiality, ethics, and conflict of interest agreement that should have been signed by the executive board members, and any contracts that the PTA currently has. So a reconciliation is really just a way to draw a line in the sand and kind of see what has been done and how we can move forward in the future. So during that period, we really hope for a stoppage of activity. So during the reconciliation, the treasurer can no longer write checks. If checks do need to be written in the case of an emergency and it is a time when there is a new treasurer coming in, the check should only be written by the incoming rather than the outgoing treasurer or bank signers. Also, while the reconciliation is taking place or while we're waiting for it to take place, the incoming signers can get to the bank to change the signature cards and get that process out of the way. The Texas PTA Financial Reconciliation Checklist and Report document breaks out the financial reconciliation process between 3 committee members. Each committee member is given a role, so hopefully make the work go a little smoother and easier. The first committee member is responsible for collecting and making sure that each of the other 2 committee members have the documents they need to perform the reconciliation, and they also do much of the financial transaction review. The second committee member drafts the initial committee report with input from the other 2 members, as well as verify that an IRS Form 990 was either filed or drafted, and that sales tax was filed if applicable. And finally, committee member number 3 does document review, a little more general than the first one, to make sure that the PTA has the documents that they need to be successful. To get the reconciliation done, a committee could meet in person, where copies don't need to be made, rather items are just shared among the committee members to get the review done. The committee could also meet virtually with everyone doing their review remotely, and each person has physical items. That means that copies of some documents were made and divided by committee member number 1. And the committee each does the items on the checklist they're responsible for and then comes back together either virtually or in person or by phone to wrap up. And then the other way a committee could do it is they could meet virtually and have scanned all the documents for review, if that works best for a PTA. But basically, we just want to make sure these reviews are getting done and providing with options to do it in a way that feels safe and convenient for the committee, yet still allows them to be effective. All right, so just some committee logistics. For the end of year review, and this is once the books have been closed for financial reconciliation, which is hopefully very quickly after the fiscal year end, the committee will generally meet within a 2-week period. For a mid-year review, meaning that there was a change in bank signers or somebody called for a review, that those reviews really should happen as soon as possible. If committee complete the work all together at once, it generally takes about 2 to 3 hours, and just keep in mind that the outgoing treasurer should not be at these reviews. And also keep in mind that the accuracy of the records will determine if it is necessary for the Financial Reconciliation Committee to meet more than once. So we always encourage our treasurers to make it easy on the committee by really thinking through what they're going to be looking for and trying to fill in any gaps before they hand the records over to the committee. Also keep in mind that all information discussed during this process is confidential. If you are meeting in person, you want to make sure you find a private place where conversations can't be overheard to meet. And only the final report is made available to the PTA Executive Board and the members. Prior to the Financial Reconciliation Committee meeting, each member will want to be sure to read and sign the confidentiality agreement. This just talks about the fact that the committee information and discussions are confidential, meetings are conducted in a private location and only include appointed members, reminds the committee that they may contact the outgoing treasurer and president for any clarification required. Additionally, it clarifies that if there is any evidence that theft, fraud, or embezzlement occurred, the PTA must follow the associated policy. And finally, reminds the committee about the makeup and if for some reason they were appointed and happen to be an authorized signer, current secretary, or incoming treasurer, that they notify the president and ask for somebody else to be appointed. So here we go. We are ready to get the reconciliation going, and the first thing we're going to cover here is reviewing checks. So we want to make sure that each check written has the proper documentation, a funds request form, and associated receipts or invoices. We want to make sure that all expenses were allocated to the proper budget item and are within the approved budget. You will want to check that all checks adhere to the adopted check signing policy if the PTA has one, and spot check signatures. If a PTA does not have standing rules or a policy, only one check signer is required. The committee will also confirm that checks are not signed by the individual to whom the check is made payable. They'll be watching for checks with multiple handwriting or different inks, indicating that maybe a blank check was released. And finally, on this one, just confirming that no checks were made payable to cash or petty cash. So moving on to debit and credit card transactions. First and foremost, a committee will want to verify that a PTA has standing rules or a policy adopted by the membership to provide guidelines for the use of a debit or credit card. They want to make sure that the debit and credit cards were only used by the authorized individuals. They need to confirm that ATM usage, cash back, and cash advances did not occur. They want to check that a PTA funds request form and receipts or invoices accompany each debit or credit card purchase, just like with a check. And finally, to verify purchases were authorized in the budget and that they're reflected in financial reports. When the committee is reviewing deposits, they want to verify that the deposits are made timely by comparing the PTA deposit form date with the bank receipt. They also want to confirm that all income was allocated to the proper approved budget item. They will verify that 2 people counted the monies and that a PTA deposit form was used and signed by the multiple counters. And if an electronic payment collection system such as PayPal, Square, or a merchant account was used to collect funds, they'll verify that documentation clearly ties the transfer or the deposit to budgeted items that are accurately reflected in the financial reports along with the associated fees. When reviewing electronic payment systems, we will check that money was transferred regularly and at least monthly to the PTA's checking account. We confirm that the account was not used to make payments. And in the end of the year review, we need to check that no balance exists in these e-commerce accounts and that all funds were transferred into the PTA checking account. So moving on now to reviewing the meeting minutes. The Financial Reconciliation Committee wants to assure that minutes were prepared, reviewed, and approved in a timely manner. They want to check that a member was appointed by the president as the non-signer on the bank account to review all accounts and that non-signer has completed the statement review by non-signer form each month for all bank, credit card, and e-commerce statements. They'll want to confirm that the prior financial reconciliation report was presented and adopted by the membership. They'll check that the recommendations from the prior financial reconciliation report were implemented, confirm that a quorum was present at all membership and executive board meetings where voting occurred, and finally confirm financial reports were presented at all membership and executive board meetings and that the beginning balances on each report match the ending balance on the previous meeting report. Minutes are a big deal, and some other things the committee will check for is verifying that the budget and all amendments were adopted or approved by the membership. They will confirm all fundraisers were approved by the membership either through the adoption of the budget or, if added after the adoption of the budget, through a separate vote. They'll confirm that any tax-free fundraisers were designated in the form of a motion and approved by the executive board or membership prior to the event. They will want to verify the executive board approved all plans of work and contracts, verify that all executive board members signed the confidentiality, ethics, and conflict of interest agreement, confirm that the records retention policy was reviewed by the executive board if there were no changes, or amended at a membership meeting if there were changes, and finally to verify that any standalone policies were approved by the membership. Some other things the committee will be checking for is, first of all, confirming that an IRS Form 990 has been submitted or prepared depending on the type of form that the PTA needs to file. They will check if the local PTA has a sales tax permit, that they will ensure sales and use tax returns were filed timely. That means on January 20th for annual filers or quarterly for quarterly filers. And if a local PTA does have a sales tax permit, ensuring that returns were filed even if no tax was collected during the period. Finally, they are checking that any collected sales tax has been held separately in escrow or liability line and not as income on the budget. The committee will also be checking that bylaws and standing rules, if the PTA has standing rules, are current. That means dated within 3 years of the beginning of the current membership year being reviewed, and that they are approved by Texas PTA. The committee also verifies that bank reconciliations were performed monthly and accurately. They make sure that the money collected for a designated purpose was spent only for that purpose. And the committee confirms that Texas PTA and the national PTA portion of dues are held separately in a liability or escrow account and not as income on the budget. Finally, they want to verify that all current membership dues in the liability or escrow account have been submitted to Texas PTA and that the totals align with the membership roster. For an end-of-year reconciliation, the balance in your membership dues, liability, or escrow account should be zero, as all state and national dues should have been submitted to Texas PTA. Once the review is completed, the committee member responsible for preparing the report will collect feedback from the other committee members. He or she will then review and complete the financial reconciliation report, allowing the treasurer to correct any identified errors before they go on the report. They'll want to be sure to attach the annual or budget versus actual report, as well as the 990N confirmation if that's the type of 990 form filed by the PTA. Here is a screenshot of the financial reconciliation report that the committee will complete. There's two sections to this, the financial summary as well as the bank account summary. And there's just some buckets of accounting here to put money in the right places so that the financial summary ending balance will be equal to the adjusted bank balance while accounting for sales tax liability, state national dues liability, as well as any outstanding deposits and payments. So this might look a little intimidating upon first glance, but once you fill in all the buckets of money, hopefully the balances will work out and it'll give you a clear understanding of where all the money is at the end of the report. The Financial Reconciliation Committee also documents the outstanding deposits and payments that haven't cleared as of within the period of the reconciliation, so that especially at the end of the year reconciliation, the incoming treasurer is aware of deposits or payments that might hit the bank account after the reconciliation occurs. To summarize the results of the financial reconciliation review, this portion, committee findings, just kind of summarizes what they found, and they will describe the records as being correct, incomplete with the following missing, substantially correct with the following adjustments needed, or incorrect with the following issues found. And keep in mind they will have given the treasurer or president the opportunity to come up with missing records or issues within a timely manner before moving forward with the final documentation of the report. So what qualifies as incorrect? Some guidance would be that it's a breach of rules, procedures, adopted practices. This would indicate a consistent disregard for procedures and policies, a consistent disregard for the handling of disbursements and deposits, or a lack of proper filing of tax documents. If the records are incomplete or incorrect, you would want to contact the treasurer or secretary to secure additional records or information. And if the matter can't be settled to the committee's satisfaction, you may want to reach out to the current president to work out what additional steps need to be taken. And the president can then request additional guidance from the council PTA president or field service representative. Since the ultimate goal of a reconciliation review is to make a PTA function better moving forward, the committee, if they have found anything to be incorrect or incomplete, will want to be sure to make recommendations again so that the PTA has the opportunity to do things even better moving forward. Before the report is considered complete, we'll want to make sure we have obtained everybody's name, signatures, and date there, and be sure to attach the annual report and accepted 990N confirmation or the budget versus actual report. If a committee needs to report that incorrect records were found, here is a sample script that could be used to present this to the membership. So in addition to letting them know you examined the records and what the current cash balance is, you would let them know what issues were found, what steps were taken to correct these issues, and what recommendations you have to prevent these from happening in the future. So hopefully this will give your membership some reassurance that if there is any issues, that you are all watching closely and trying to make sure they don't happen moving forward. So how does this financial reconciliation report work in general? Here are some things to keep in mind. A committee member makes a report to the membership at the first meeting held after the conclusion of the reconciliation. The association or membership adopts the report at that time. And if it is the report following the end of the fiscal year, a copy of the annual report and the 990N, if filed, is attached to the financial reconciliation report and placed in the minutes. And in the event that a complete financial reconciliation cannot be done due to the inadequacy or unavailability of records, this is reported to the membership and steps are recommended in the report to correct the situation. If there is evidence that theft, fraud, or embezzlement has occurred, the PTA must follow the corresponding policy at txpta.org/policies. Thank you so much for your time to either have prepared the records for the reconciliation or to do the reconciliation for your PTA. We know your volunteer time is valuable and appreciate you. If you do have any other questions, you could start with either your council PTA or your field service representative. Also, you could check the Treasurer's Resource Guide, which is available for purchase or download at txpta.org/treasurer. You're welcome to call the Texas PTA office at 800-TALK-PTA or reach out to the Finance Department or the Texas PTA Treasurer. And don't forget that everyone can back the future because anyone can join PTA. And again, thank you for supporting your PTA by performing this important service for them. Thank you.